rules that it has agreed to. Thank you.
I call Maureen Pugh.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And I stand today too in support of the Crown Minerals Amendment Bill in its second reading here today. And as my colleague Melissa Lee said earlier, she got excited when she thought she was going to be talking about Taranaki, and so did I. But so the tone of my presentation and my contribution today is going to be somewhat more subdued, because we are, in fact, on this side of the House supporting it. And as Andrew Falloon has just said, why wouldn't we, when this was initiated last year? It was actually introduced as a bill to the Select Committee on the 5th of April this year, and they've reported back in 7 months. So in terms of a Select Committee process and the consultation required, that's probably very timely. And across that time, Madam Speaker, during the process, 11 submissions were received, and 5 of those were oral submissions heard here in Wellington. But what gave me great comfort when I read the departmental report was that prior to preparing the bill, that MB had consulted with a wide range of interest groups and organisations, including the Department of the Prime Minister and Cabinet, but the Ministry for the Environment, Ministry for Foreign Affairs and Trade, Conservation, Ministry of Justice, the EPA and the Office of Treaty Settlements and Treasury. But what did give me comfort was that MB also consulted with the Petroleum Exploration and Production Association of New Zealand, as we know as PEPANZ. They consulted with Stratera and Greymouth Petroleum, not to be confused with a major town on the west coast of New Zealand, of the South Island in my electorate, but Greymouth Petroleum being a major exploration company in the North Island. But also some broader stakeholder contribution as well, Madam Speaker. The bill makes some minor amendments to the Crown Minerals Act of 1991, and it's simply tidying up some of the duplication and confusion and inconsistencies that we saw in the Act. And even with the submitters that came along to the Select Committee, it became clear that there was confusion around some of the parts of the existing Act, and as a result there were recommendations made that there should be some changes made to different sections and parts simply to clarify the exact meaning of those parts to avoid that confusion in the future. One of the biggest changes that has been made is in terms of the prosecution of cases where the change of control of a permit participant company who fails to notify the Energy and Resources Minister would now be an offence under this Act and could in fact attract a fine of up to $800,000. And it did come as a surprise to me that prior to this change that this was not actually considered an offence for non-compliance. But I suggest that now, with a fine of up to $800,000, that this will certainly bring about a change of behaviour if anyone was considering not notifying the Minister. There is nothing like a deterrent of $800,000. Madam Speaker, the Select Committee recommended that Clause 23 be added to this bill so that it confirms about the change of control of a permit operator. Now, a permit operator is quite different to a permit holder. The permit operator is the person who has the day-to-day responsibility of managing the mining operation. So this Clause 23, it will now say that if this change of permit operator is not completed, that there would be that there are now provisions in this Act, but it also has a transitional period so that if there were permits that were operational and this Act comes into place before the transition of the mining permit, then the unintended consequence of breaching the existing Act the new Act rather than the old Act, there would not be an offence under this provision of Clause 23. So, Madam Speaker, I commit this bill to the House. Thank you.
I call Tamati Coffey.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to take a call on this Crown Minerals Amendment.